For 3 long years, one cat waited silently on the same rooftop. Every day, it watched the world go by, hidden in the shadows, with no one to notice. But sometimes all it takes is a single person, a single moment, to change everything. This is the story of the cat who waited and the man who looked up just in time. There was a small, quiet town nestled between hills and forests where life moved slowly and the people were kind but distant. In this town, there was a house at the edge, one that had been abandoned for years. Its roof, once sturdy, was now a place of refuge for the stray animals of the neighborhood. And there, on the very same rooftop, a cat had been seen every single day without fail. The cat wasn't like any other stray. It wasn't wild, nor did it seem lost. It was simply there. The roof was its kingdom, and from there, it would watch the world below. Some townspeople had taken notice of the gray tabby, but no one had ever seen it interact with anyone. It wasn't a cat that begged for food or followed people home. It never sought attention, yet it was always present, a silent observer of the world. As the years passed, the cat's presence became part of the landscape. People would walk by, raise their eyes, and see the cat perched in its usual spot, staring at nothing in particular, yet as if it was waiting. Some wondered why it was always there, others simply accepted it as another quirk of the town. The cat was just part of the scenery. But for some reason, people felt an unspoken connection to it, a sense of quiet understanding. The cat wasn't just a stray, it had a purpose, a role it seemed destined to play, but no one could understand what that was. Among the residents of the town was a man named Jacob, a quiet soul who had moved there after the death of his wife. He had no family left and had come to the town hoping to find peace, to heal from the sorrow that had overwhelmed him for so long. The house near the edge of town was the first he had rented, a place that seemed to offer solitude, and perhaps some space for a broken heart to mend. But from the very first day he had stepped inside, he felt as if he wasn't alone. And it wasn't just the house itself, it was the cat on the roof. Somehow, it felt like it was waiting for him. Jacob never saw the cat come and go, but every morning, as he drank his coffee, he would look up at the rooftop. There it was, calmly watching the horizon. It was as if the cat understood something he didn't. And as much as he tried to ignore it, the presence of the cat lingered in his thoughts. Was it just a coincidence? Or was there something more to this odd, constant companion perched high above? There was a small, quiet town nestled between rolling hills and dense forests. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's name, but life moved at its own slow pace. People rarely hurried, and the pace of life was marked by the changing of seasons, not by bustling crowds or city lights. In this town, there was a house on the edge, standing tall against the backdrop of the hills. It had been abandoned for years, its windows boarded up, its paint peeling away in the harsh winds of time. The roof, once sturdy and reliable, was now a haven for something unexpected, a gray tabby cat. No one had ever seen how it arrived or when it had taken residence. It just was there, perched high above the ground, silently observing the world below. The cat, unlike many strays, wasn't wild or skittish. It didn't beg for scraps or dart away at the first sign of human presence. It was simply present. Every morning, like clockwork, the tabby would appear on the same spot on the roof, sitting still and watching the quiet town unfold beneath it. No one knew its name and no one knew its story. It wasn't a cat that mingled with the townspeople or sought out human company. It didn't even look at the people who occasionally passed by beneath it. It just sat there, eyes fixed on the horizon, as if it had all the time in the world. To some, it was a mystery. To others, it was just another oddity of the town, like the crumbling fence or the stray dog that wandered the woods. As the years passed, the cat's presence became a constant in the lives of the townsfolk. People would often glance upward when they walked past the house, seeing the cat perched on the roof, a living fixture of the town's landscape. Its coat had grown matted and weathered from exposure to the elements, but still, it remained unwavering. The townspeople began to speak of it in hushed tones. Some said it had been there for as long as they could remember. Others believed it had appeared only after the house was abandoned, as if drawn to the place by something it couldn't explain. But despite the many theories, no one knew where the cat came from, why it stayed, or what was waiting for. It simply existed in the same spot, day after day, as if part of the town itself. Among the residents was Jacob, a man who had recently moved to the town after the death of his wife. He had no family left, and after months of mourning, he felt a pull to this quiet town, hoping it would offer some peace. The house he rented, though worn and lonely, was all he could afford. It sat at the very edge of the town, isolated enough to allow him the solitude he sought. The days blurred together for him as he spent his time cleaning the house and trying to fill the empty spaces in his heart. But from the very first day he moved in, he felt as though he wasn't truly alone. There was something about the house, something unsettling in its stillness, that made him feel watched. And it wasn't just the house itself. It was the cat on the roof. Every time he looked up, there it was, sitting there as though waiting for him. Jacob tried to ignore the presence of the cat at first, dismissing it as one of the many peculiarities of small-town life. But no matter how hard he tried, the sight of the gray tabby became a constant companion. He would drink his morning coffee and gaze out the window, his eyes inevitably drawn to the roof. There it would be, unmoving, silently watching the world below. It was as if the cat knew something he didn't, something beyond the quiet routine of daily life. Jacob couldn't shake the feeling that the cat was more than just a stray animal. It was as though it had some unspoken role to play in his life, some reason for being there that no one could quite understand. And though he never spoke to anyone about it, deep down, he felt that this cat was waiting for something, or perhaps someone, to acknowledge it. But the question remained, what was it waiting for? One chilly autumn morning, as the leaves outside began to turn golden, something unusual happened. Jacob awoke earlier than usual. He wasn't sure why, but the pull to get out of bed seemed stronger than ever. As he rubbed his eyes and stumbled toward the kitchen, he noticed something outside his window that made his heart skip a beat. The gray tabby, as always, was sitting on its perch on the roof, but today there was a subtle change. The cat was no longer still. It was moving, pacing back and forth along the edge of the roof. This was unlike anything Jacob had seen before. The cat, who had always been so motionless and contemplative, now seemed agitated, as if it were anticipating something. Jacob paused, his coffee cup halfway to his lips, and stared in confusion. Could something be wrong? Curiosity gnawed at him, and for the first time since moving to the town, Jacob found himself feeling an unexplainable urge to approach the house. He had always kept his distance from the cat, not wanting to interfere in whatever strange routine it had established. But this morning felt different. There was an energy in the air, a quiet anticipation that seemed to thrum in the space between them. As Jacob stood by the window, the cat's gaze locked onto his. It wasn't the usual disinterested stare it gave to everyone else. This time, its eyes seemed to communicate something Jacob couldn't quite place. It was as if the cat knew he was watching, knew he was the one it had been waiting for. He felt a chill run down his spine, a strange sensation that lingered long after the cat looked away and resumed its pacing. Jacob, without thinking, put on his jacket and stepped outside. The crisp air bit at his face as he made his way toward the old house at the end of the street. He had no idea why he was doing it, why he felt so drawn to the cat that had spent years in isolation on that very roof. But something deep inside him urged him forward, as if the world was conspiring to make this moment happen. As he reached the base of the house, he looked up at the roof. The cat was still pacing, but now it was closer to the edge, as if it were on the verge of leaping down. Jacob's heart raced. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was a crucial moment, a turning point in both his life and the life of the cat. Without thinking, Jacob took a step forward, his hand reaching out as though he could somehow bridge the distance between them. The cat paused, its ears twitching as if it had sensed his approach. For a brief moment, there was complete stillness, the kind that only comes when something momentous is about to unfold. Jacob's breath caught in his throat as he stood there, rooted to the spot, unsure of what to do next. Then, as if in response to his silent plea, the cat took a slow, deliberate step toward the edge of the roof. Jacob held his breath, his eyes never leaving the feline's every movement. It seemed to hesitate, as though contemplating something of great importance. Just as Jacob thought the cat might jump, a soft, almost inaudible meow drifted down from above. It wasn't the typical sound he had come to expect from a cat, a mere grunt or a chirp. This was different. It was a call, a sound that seemed to echo the yearning Jacob had felt ever since he arrived in this town. The moment stretched on, and Jacob felt an overwhelming sense of urgency. Something was about to change. In that instant, He knew that this cat, this mysterious, lonely creature, was reaching out to him. It wasn't just waiting for food or a casual pet. It was waiting for him, for someone who could understand its quiet desperation, someone who could offer the connection it had been seeking for so long. Jacob felt his heart swell with something he hadn't felt in years, a flicker of hope. The years of grief and loneliness that had weighed him down seemed to lift just a little, as if the cat had somehow awakened a part of him that had been dormant. It wasn't just the cat that needed rescuing, it was both of them. The realization hit him like a wave, and suddenly he understood. This wasn't just a chance meeting. This was fate, bringing two lost souls together in most unlikely of places. And now, as the cat's gaze met his again, Jacob knew that his life, and the life of this stray cat, would never be the same. Over the next few weeks, Jacob found himself returning to the old house more frequently. Each time, he would stand at the base of the street and look up, hoping for a glimpse of the cat perched on the roof. It didn't take long for the once distant creature to start recognizing his presence. At first, the cat would simply stare down at him with a neutral expression, as if assessing whether Jacob was a threat or not. But slowly over time, the cat began to react differently. One day, Jacob stood there, staring up at the roof, when he saw the cat approach the edge. And this time, it didn't just watch. It meowed. It was a soft, almost tentative sound, but it was enough to make Jacob's heart race with excitement. This simple action felt like a breakthrough. Something had shifted. Jacob took a step forward, not wanting to break the fragile connection they were forming. He spoke gently, as if talking to an old friend he hadn't seen in years. "Hey there, buddy," he said, his voice soft but steady. The cat's eyes flicked to him, and for a brief moment, they held a certain softness, an unspoken understanding. Jacob smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him. It wasn't much, but was enough to encourage him to try again the next day. And the next. Each day, their interactions became a little more familiar, a little more comfortable. The cat, who had once seemed so distant and unreachable, began to trust Jacob more and more. Soon, Jacob began to notice subtle changes in the cat's behavior. Instead of retreating as soon as Jacob approached, the cat would sit at the edge of the roof and watch him for longer periods, as if it were waiting for Jacob to do something. Jacob would talk to it, share little snippets of his day, and slowly, he began to sense that the cat was listening, truly listening. The more time they spent together, the more Jacob felt the invisible bond growing between them. He started leaving little treats on the ground for the cat, hoping it would come down and eat. Some days, the cat would simply ignore them, but on others, it would come closer, cautiously sniffing the food before eating it. Each time it did, Jacob's heart swelled with a quiet joy. It was a sign, however small, that the cat was beginning to trust him. One particularly crisp afternoon, Jacob found himself standing at the base of the house again, his hands stuffed into his jacket pockets as he gazed up. This time, there was something different in the air. The cat was perched on the roof again, but its stance was different from before. It wasn't just sitting there passively. It was leaning forward, as if waiting for something, its eyes locked on Jacob. His breath caught in his chest as he realized the cat was no longer observing him from a distance. It was as if it was waiting for Jacob to take the next step to finally bridge the gap between them. He had a sudden, overwhelming urge to go up to the roof. The thought seemed crazy, but there was something about the connection they had built that made him feel like he had to do it. Jacob found an old ladder in the yard and set it up against the side of the house. His heart pounded in his chest as he climbed, each step taking him closer to the cat, closer to a connection he hadn't known he needed. When he finally reached the roof, the cat was there, just a few feet away, watching him intently. Jacob held his breath, unsure of what would happen next. Would the cat run away? Would it retreat to a place where he couldn't reach it? Instead, the cat simply stood there, its gaze unwavering, as if it were waiting for Jacob to make the first move. Slowly, cautiously, Jacob sat down beside it. He didn't touch the cat, not yet, but just sitting there on the roof with the creature that had captivated his thoughts for so long felt like the most natural thing in the world. In that quiet, still moment, something profound passed between them. The cat didn't need to speak. Its eyes, soft and trusting, told Jacob everything he needed to know. There was a bond here, one forged through time and patience, a bond that neither of them could deny. As they sat there together, the world seemed to disappear. It was just Jacob and the cat, two beings connected by an unspoken understanding, two lost souls finding each other in the most unlikely of places. One evening, as the sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows over the neighborhood, Jacob found himself standing outside the house once again, looking up at the roof. He had spent weeks building this connection with the cat, and every day seemed to bring them closer. But that evening, something was different. The cat wasn't on the roof. Jacob's stomach twisted with a sudden, sharp feeling of panic. He looked around frantically, hoping to see a glimpse of the familiar shape, but it was nowhere to be found. His heart began to race as he checked the yard, the trees, and even the nearby alleyway. The cat was simply gone. As minutes turned into hours, Jacob's anxiety grew. He paced back and forth, trying to keep his thoughts from spiraling. What if something had happened to the cat? What if it had been injured or worse, trapped somewhere? His mind ran wild with possibilities, none of them good. It had become clear to Jacob that this cat, this mysterious creature that had once been a mere stranger, had become a part of his life in a way he hadn't expected. It wasn't just a pet anymore. It was a friend, a companion that had silently healed him in ways he didn't even realize he needed. That night, Jacob couldn't sleep. He lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, his thoughts consumed with the cat. He knew that the bond they shared was fragile, that it had taken time and patience to build. And now, as he lay there in the quiet, he realized just how much the cat meant to him. It wasn't just the companionship that had grown between them. It was the hope, the comfort, the reminder that sometimes the smallest connections can make the biggest impact. But now that connection felt threatened, fragile. What if it was lost forever? The following morning, Jacob couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled over him. He ate breakfast in a haze, barely tasting the food in front of him. The thought of the cat being out there somewhere, alone, and possibly in danger, gnawed at him. He couldn't just wait idly by, wondering what had happened. He had to do something. He had to find the cat. With renewed determination, Jacob grabbed his jacket and headed out the door, the weight of urgency pulling him forward. As he walked down the street, he couldn't help but scan every corner, every building, every inch of the yard where the cat had once sat, waiting for him. There was no sign of it. He walked further down the road, hoping that maybe, just maybe, the cat had wandered off in search of something, but his search was in vain. Just when he thought he might be losing hope, something caught his eye. There, at the edge of the neighborhood, behind a cluster of old bushes, he saw a familiar figure, sitting silently, its eyes staring back at him. The cat was back, but there was something different about it. Jacob's heart skipped a beat as he approached slowly, careful not to startle it. The cat's fur was matted, its once pristine coat now tangled and dirty. It looked thinner, frilier. Its eyes, though still the same deep amber, seemed duller, more distant. Jacob's stomach twisted with a pang of guilt. How long had the cat been out here like this? How much had it endured? The connection they had built over the past few weeks was still there, but it felt strained now, as though something had shifted. Jacob knelt down slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Hey buddy, where have you been?" he asked, though he knew the answer. There was no response. The cat simply watched him, unmoving. Jacob's heart ached as he gently reached out, his fingers brushing against the cat's fur. It flinched, but only slightly, as if it had learned to be cautious. Jacob pulled back, giving it space. This wasn't the same confident creature that had once meowed down at him from the roof. This was a cat that had been through something difficult, something painful. Jacob knew he had to be patient, just like before. He stood up, still watching the cat carefully, his mind racing. He couldn't let the cat suffer like this. He couldn't let it slip away after everything they had been through. With renewed determination, Jacob made a promise to himself. He would get the cat the help it needed. He would bring it inside, give it food, warmth, and care. And above all, he would rebuild the connection they had once shared, no matter how long it took. He knew now that this was not just about rescuing an animal. It was about saving something that had become a part of his life in ways he couldn't yet fully understand. As Jacob walked back to his house, the cat trailing behind him cautiously, he felt a sense of purpose settle over him. The journey wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. This was a turning point, not only for the cat, but for him too. The connection they had formed was stronger than ever, and Jacob knew that no matter what came next, they would face it together. Days passed, and Jacob did everything he could to help the cat recover. He took it to the vet, where the doctor confirmed that the cat had been through a lot: malnutrition, dehydration, and perhaps even the toll of surviving on its own for so long. But the vet also said something that made Jacob's heart swell with hope. This cat is a fighter. And Jacob could see it every time he looked into the cat's eyes. There was a strength there, a quiet resilience that mirrored his own journey of healing. He named the cat Shadow, a name that seemed fitting for an animal who had spent so much time lurking in the shadows of the world, never quite seen, but always there. And just like that, Shadow became more than just a stray. He became a symbol of perseverance, of survival, and of the unspoken bond that had formed between them. The cat had fought to stay alive, just as Jacob had fought to rebuild his own life after everything he had lost. But even as Shadow's health improved, there was still a quiet sadness in his eyes. The cat would often sit by the window, staring out into the world beyond, as if waiting for something. It was as if he could still hear the call of the rooftop, that place where their connection had first sparked. Jacob wondered if Shadow ever thought about the days when he had watched from above, content to simply observe the world. But now, there was no more waiting. Shadow had a home, a family, and Jacob wasn't about to let him go back to that lonely rooftop. One evening, as the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the room, Jacob decided to do something special. He opened the window and gently placed a small blanket on the sill. "Go ahead," he whispered to Shadow, his voice filled with warmth. "You don't have to wait anymore. You've found a place to belong." To Jacob's surprise, Shadow hesitated for only a moment before jumping onto the windowsill. He sat there, looking out into the world with a calmness that Jacob had never seen before. For the first time since he had met the cat, Shadow seemed at peace. His body was no longer tense, his eyes no longer filled with the quiet sadness of the past. Instead, there was a sense of contentment, of homecoming. Jacob stood by the window, watching as the cat gazed out at the world. He realized that the transformation wasn't just in Shadow's health, but in his heart as well. The cat had gone from a lonely, vulnerable creature to a confident, loved companion. And Jacob? He had changed too. He had gone from being a man who was struggling with his own sense of purpose to someone who had discovered the beauty of unconditional love and the healing power of companionship. The bond between Jacob and Shadow had become unbreakable. In their quiet moments together, they understood each other in a way that words could never capture. The cat no longer needed to wait on the rooftop for someone to notice him. He had found his place, and so had Jacob. They had both learned that sometimes the greatest gifts come when you least expect them, and that even in the most challenging moments, there's always hope, always a chance for something beautiful to emerge. As the night grew darker, Jacob sat down on the couch, Shadow curled up next to him. The world outside might have seemed uncertain, but inside there was peace. And for the first time in a long while, Jacob realized that he wasn't alone anymore. He had a friend, a companion who had chosen to stay, to fight, and to transform alongside him. And together, they would face whatever came next, knowing that no matter how difficult the journey, they were never truly alone. In the end, it wasn't just about a cat on a rooftop. It was about the power of patience, the strength of connection, and how sometimes the smallest actions can change everything. The bond between humans and animals is truly unexplainable and miraculous. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that there's always hope. And if you want more heartwarming animal stories like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an incredible journey of rescue and love.